welcome back to the channel. Today we're getting into a book that will completely change the way you think about the word self-sabotage. And by the end of this video, you might realize that the thing you spent years calling a character flaw was never a flaw at all. It was a message. Real quick, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm a new creator, and your support genuinely means a lot. It helps me keep creating videos like this. Now, back to the topic. The book is The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. And the idea at its center is deceptively simple, almost uncomfortable in how simple. There is nothing standing between you and the life you want except yourself, not other people, you. But here's the twist that makes this book so different from everything else on the show. That is not meant to be a punishment. It's meant to be the best news you've ever heard. Because if you're the one creating you're also the only one who can move. Let's start with the thing most of us get completely wrong about self-sabotage. We assume it means we hate ourselves. We picture some cruel inner voice that wants to watch us fail, some broken part of our psychology that's rooting against us. But that's not what's happening. Self-sabotage isn't self-hatred, it's self-protection. Every single time you've procrastinated on the thing that mattered most, pulled away from the relationship that was actually going somewhere, or found yourself back at the drive-thru 3 hours after promising yourself you'd eat clean, you weren't failing. You were meeting a need, an unconscious one, sure, but a real one. The behavior that looks like it's ruining your life is actually your mind's best attempt at keeping you safe from something it's more afraid of than failure. Think about Carl Jung for a second. Long before he became one of the most influential minds in psychology, as a kid, he fell and hit his head at school, and in that moment, some part of him thought, maybe now I won't. Not long after, he started having these strange, uncontrollable fainting spells. Nobody planned that. Nobody consciously chose it. But his body had found a way to get him out of a place that felt unbearable, and it did it without asking permission from his conscious mind. That's the blueprint for almost everything we call self-sabotage. It's not weakness. It's an unconscious solution to a problem you haven't looked at directly. So here's where it gets personal. If you have a big recurring issue in you, something that keeps showing up no matter how many times you swear you'll fix it, the truth is, you probably don't have a big problem. You have a big attachment. Ask yourself honestly, what am I getting out of keeping this the way it is? That question feels almost offensive. Why would I want to stay broke, or stay in the wrong relationship, or stay stuck in a job I've out? But dig a little, and you'll usually find something underneath. Maybe you've never chased real wealth, because somewhere along the way you learned that people with money are corrupt, and becoming one of them would mean becoming someone you don't like. Maybe you keep choosing partners who can't compete because some part of you associates love with loss, and staying at arm's length feels safer than alternative. Maybe you're not starting the business, or asking for the raise because succeeding would mean people start paying attention to you. And attention, for reasons buried way back in your history, has never felt safe. This is the part that changes everything. Being successful can make you feel less liked. Finding love can make you feel more exposed. Playing small can protect you from being seen and judged. So when your mind chooses the smaller, safer version of your life over and over again, it's not because it's stupid. It's because on some level, it's doing math, and the math says the risk isn't worth it. Your job isn't to override that calculation through sheer will. Your job is to figure out what the calculation is, because once you can see it, it starts to lose its grip on you. Now, some of this comes down to something psychologist Gay Hendricks calls your upper limit, which is basically your personal ceiling for how much good you'll yourself have. Everyone has one. It's your tolerance for happiness, your threshold for things going right. And here's the strange part. We're not actually wired to chase happiness the way we think we are. We're wired to chase what's familiar. So, the moment life gets better than what you're used to, some quiet alarm goes off, and you find yourself picking a fight with your partner right after the best week you've had together, or getting a headache the week your business finally takes off, or suddenly feeling exhausted and unmotivated right when a relationship starts to feel genuinely good. That's not coincidence. That's your nervous system trying to drag you back to the temperature it knows. And this connects to something almost nobody tells you about achieving. When you finally get the thing you've wanted for years, you don't get to relax into it. Neurologically, dopamine isn't actually the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of wanting more. The moment you acquire what you've been chasing, that surge fades, and your brain is already scanning for the next mountain. This is one of the quiet reasons we sabotage the things we want most. We sense, on some level, that arriving won't give us permission to finally stop. It will just reset the game. And if you've spent your whole life in survival mode, just getting by, learning to actually receive good things, To relax into having instead of constantly wanting might be the hardest transition of all. This is why people finally land the relationship, the money, or the recognition they always wanted sometimes sabotage it almost immediately. They're not equipped for thriving because they've only ever practiced surviving. Here's something else worth sitting with. Any change, even a wonderful, will feel uncomfortable simply because it's unfamiliar. That discomfort isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's just your body catching up to your life. This is why people can experience genuine anxiety or even something like depression right after a wedding, a promotion, or the birth of a child. We assume good things should only feel good, and when they come loaded with stress instead, we panic and think something's broken. Nothing's broken. You're just adjusting. Your mind starts scanning for what could take this away from you, becomes hypervigilant about the bill that might come, the infidelity that probably isn't happening, the job that isn't actually at risk. This is called adjustment shock, and understanding it alone can save you from making a huge mistake, like walking away from something because it doesn't feel the way you assumed it would. Now let's talk about the part of this book that quietly reframes almost every difficult emotion you've ever had. Wiest argues that emotions like anger, jealousy, resentment, and even guilt aren't your enemy. They're messenger, and most of us never learned how to read the message. Anger, for instance, isn't meant to be aimed at other people. It's meant to mobilize you. It shows you exactly where your boundary and what you consider unjust. And it's often the peak state right before real change happens in someone's life. Jealousy is even more. It's not really about the other person at all. It's a cover for sadness and self-dissatisfaction. If you want to know what you truly want, look closely at who you're jealous of. You probably don't want their exact love, but you're picking up on the fact that they're pursuing something you've been too afraid to chase yourself. And regret, as uncomfortable as it feels, is almost never about the past. It's a rehearsal for the future. It's your own mind showing you, in vivid detail, exactly what you need to do differently starting now. This reframe extends into something the book calls psychic thinking, and once you notice it, you'll see it everywhere in your own head. Psychic thinking is when you take a feeling and treat it like a prophecy. You assume you know what someone else is thinking. You assume the worst-case scenario, the one that scares you the most, must also be the most likely. You start to believe your gut is an oracle that can see around corners into the future. But here's the truth, and it's a genuinely liberating. Your gut instinct can only respond to what's happening right now. It cannot predict tomorrow. If you feel a strong reaction about something that hasn't happened yet, that's not instinct, that's projection, usually built out of not wisdom. Real intuition is quiet. It doesn't scream or flood your body with adrenaline. It's the calm, steady thought that tells you it's going to be okay, not the panicked spiral convincing you it's all falling apart. Learning to tell the difference between those two voices might be one of the most valuable skills you ever develop, because so much of our suffering doesn't come from what's actually happening. It comes from what we imagine is about to happen. There's also this idea that most anxious people aren't over, they're actually underthinking. And I want to slow down on this one, because it reframes anxiety in a way that feels almost backward from everything we've been. If you've ever wondered why you're so afraid of one specific thing, while other people seem completely unbothered by it, it's usually because you've never let yourself think the scenario all the way through. You picture the scary moment, you imagine yourself panic, and then your mind just stops there, at the climax, and calls it a conclusion. You never get to the part where you adapt, where you're actually fine. That's why exposure works so well for treatment. It forces your brain to finish the story it never let itself tell. And that's also why the smartest, most perceptive people are often most anxious. Their minds are brilliant at connecting dots and inferring meaning, which is an incredible gift most of the time. But it also means they're exceptionally good at manufacturing threats out. The same skill that makes someone a great strategist can also make them a prisoner of their own imagination if it's never redirected. Now, if you take one thing from the middle of this book, let it be this. You don't change your life in dramatic breakthrough. You change it in microshifts. We're all secretly waiting for that cinematic moment, the one where everything clicks and your entire existence transforms overnight. That moment isn't coming, and waiting for it is actually one of the sneakiest ways we stay stuck. Real change looks almost embarrassingly small. It's drinking one extra glass of water today. It's reading one page. It's going to bed 10 minutes earlier. It's the version of the classic thought experiment where $1 million handed to you today sounds incredible until you remember that a single penny doubled every day for a month ends up worth more than 10 million. Compounding doesn't feel dramatic while it's happening. That's exactly why most people give up on it before it has time to work. Once you start paying attention to your own patterns, this book gives you an almost eerie way of decoding what your self-sabotage is actually trying. If you keep going back to someone who broke your heart, it might be pointing you toward unresolved patterns from your childhood. If you can't stop overworking, it's probably less about proving your value and more about avoiding the discomfort of sitting still with your own feeling. If you're endlessly scrolling social media, ask yourself honestly how you feel you finally put the If it's not relaxed or inspired, you're probably using it to avoid something, and that something is worth naming. Every single one of these behaviors, according to Wiest, is your subconscious handing you the habit itself isn't the problem you need to it's a clue pointing you toward the actual problem. There's a particularly important distinction the book controlling your emotions and suppressing them, because on the surface, they can look. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you don't yell. Is that self-control or suppression? The difference isn't in the behavior, it's in your awareness. Suppression is unconscious. You don't even register how you just bury it and move on, and eventually it leaks out somewhere else. Usually somewhere far worse than a moment in traffic. Control is conscious. You know exactly how you let yourself feel it full, and then you choose, deliberately, how you respond. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this book, because a life built on suppression eventually collapses under its own weight, while a life built on conscious emotional control just gets steadier and stronger over time. And this is where the book gets into something genuinely tender, which is how we actually let go of the past. You cannot force yourself to let go. If you've ever been told to just move on and felt a flash of quiet rage at how oversimplified that sounds, you were right to willing yourself not to care doesn't, because the harder you grip the idea of releasing something, the tighter you actually hold on to it. Real letting go doesn't happen because someone tells you. It happens the day you take one small step toward building something new, and then you let yourself cry about the old thing for as long as you need to. It happens gradually, in the quiet accumulation of a new life so full and engaging, that one day, without ceremony, you realize you went an entire afternoon without thinking about what used to hurt you. Wiest offers a specific way to work through. Close your eyes, locate the discomfort, and follow it back to where it started. Then imagine your healed older self sitting beside your younger self in that exact moment, offering them the reassurance that and never got, that this is going to be okay, that something better is coming, that they didn't do anything wrong by feeling exactly what they felt. There's also a section on trauma that reframes it in a way that might land differently than you expect. Trauma isn't just a psychological, it's a physical. It literally lives in your body. Your fascia tightens around a broken heart the same way it hardens around a broken bone, forming a kind of natural armor so you don't get hurt the same way twice. And the way you heal it isn't purely through talking or thinking your way out of it. It's through restoring safety in the exact area of life that was damaged. If a relationship hurt you, you don't build a fortress around your heart forever. You slowly build new, healthy relationships. If money traumatized you, don't avoid it. You learn to manage it well until it no longer feels like it. The instinct to overcompensate in a completely different area of life, like chasing achievement to cover up a relationship, might feel productive, but it rarely resolves anything because the actual injury never gets addressed. One of the most quietly powerful ideas in this entire book is the concept of your core commitment versus your core need. Your core commitment is what you unconsciously organize your entire life around, and it's usually a cover for something deeper you're actually afraid to ask for. If your core commitment is staying in control, your real core is probably trust. If your core commitment is being needed by everyone around you, your real core need is probably just know you're wanted for who you are, not for what you provide. Here's the part that stings a little. The less you feed your actual core need, the louder your defensive commitment symptoms get. The person who needs trust and hasn't found it starts controlling everything hard. The person who needs to feel wanted and hasn't found it starts making themselves indispensable to everyone. But the moment you start feeding the real need underneath, the exhausting symptoms on the surface start to quiet down on their own, almost like white noise finally getting turned off. The book also spends real time on the idea of building your own principles. And this part is deceptively practical for something so grounded in emotional psychology. More money doesn't automatically make you good with a new relationship doesn't automatically make you good at relationships. Your next job doesn't automatically make you good at work-life balance. What actually changes your life is not your circumstances, but your principles, the personal rules you commit to regardless of how you feel on any given day. Someone earning $500,000 a year can be just as financially unstable as someone earning $50,000. because the number was never the real variable. You were. And principles, unlike inspiration, are boring by design. They don't give you a rush. They're not exciting to think about. But inspiration fades within days, while principles compound quietly for decades, which is exactly why the people who seem to have it together aren't the most motivated in the room. They're the most consistent. Near the end, the book turns towards something a little more expansive, your purpose. And it makes a point that might genuinely reframe how you've been thinking about your purpose was never meant to be one single job title, or one relationship, or one identity you cling to forever. If it were, what happens the day you retire, or the kids grow up and move out, or the business finally sells? Your purpose is bigger and quieter than any single. It's the ongoing act of becoming the most complete, honest, and self-aware version of yourself. And everything else, your career, your relationships, your creative work, is just the current expression of it. This is why the book suggests some genuinely useful questions. You feel lost. What would you do with your life if social media didn't exist and nobody could ever see it? What comes to you so naturally that it barely feels like effort? What do you want people to remember about you? Not what you accomplished, but who you actually were to them. There's one more idea buried in the middle of this book that I think deserves its own moment, because it explains why some of the most self-aware people you know still seem to be constantly manufacturing problems out of. The human mind, Wiest argues, is anti-fragile. That means it doesn't just survive adversity, it actually needs a certain amount of it to function. The same way an immune system gets stronger after exposure to germs, or a muscle grows only after it's been torn. If you deny your brain any real challenge to work through, it won't just relax into peace and gratitude the way you'd expect. It will manufacture a threat to chew on instead. Except this time there's no reward waiting at the end. Just you, quietly at war with yourself for no reason at all. This is why people who seem to have every external thing going right for them can still feel like they're constantly bracing for disaster. Their mind isn't broken. It's understimulated. And it's doing what minds do when they're understimulated, which is invent something to solve. The fix isn't eliminating every hard thing from. It's making sure you're spending that intensity on real challenges you can actually grow from, instead of letting it leak out sideways into imaginary catastrophe. This connects to something almost every one of us has felt, but never had language, which the book calls homeostatic impulse. Your body already does this with things like temperature and heart rate, quietly keeping everything inside a narrow, familiar range without you ever having to think about it. What most people don't realize is that your mind does the exact same thing with your entire life. It's constantly filtering the world to confirm what you already believe about yourself, and constantly nudging your thoughts and choices back toward whatever pattern feels most familiar, whether or not that pattern is actually good for you. This is why willpower alone so rarely creates lasting change. You can force a new behavior for a few days through your discipline, but your subconscious is still quietly pulling you back toward the old normal the entire time. Real change happens when you stop trying to override your habits by force, and instead let your body slowly, patiently adjust to a new baseline. The same tiny, repeated way you built the. And that leads into something the book treats almost like a homecoming, which is the idea of inner peace as opposed to happiness. Happiness, as wonderful as it feels, is fickle by nature. It depends on things going a certain way, on people behaving a certain way, on circumstances lining up. Chase it directly, and you'll always find a shadow of unhappiness trailing right behind, because that's simply how contrast works. Inner peace is different. It isn't the opposite of it's the steady, quiet knowing underneath every day, good or bad, that you're going to be okay. It's what people are actually pointing to when they say they know something deep down, even while they're anxious or upset on the surface. And the reason so many of us feel disconnected from that place isn't because it's gone. It's because most of us were never taught how to access it. So instead, we learn to live almost entirely from the noisy, reactive voice in our heads. The one Buddhist teachers call the monkey, jumping from one manufactured worry to the next. Getting back to that deeper stillness isn't about becoming it. It's about quieting the surface enough to notice that the calm was there underneath the waiting. So here's where I want to live. Somewhere out there is a version of your life you already know is possible. One where the resistance finally loosens, where the old patterns stop running the show, where you stop mistaking self-protection for self-sabotage and start actually listening to what it's been trying to tell you all along. The mountain in front of you was never punishment. It was never proof that something is wrong with you. It was the shape of your own becoming, standing exactly where it needed to stand so you'd finally have to climb. And one day, you'll look back, and it'll be so small behind you, you'll barely be able to make it out. But who you had to become to get over it, that part stays with you forever. That was always